Kimraha Huladunya, Fauchagu, he Olde Scots the Celtic podcast. Or should I say, Kiet Mia Faucha. Since this podcast is dedicated to the Irish and St. Patrick this week, on today's show we're going to introduce you to some numbers and ordinal numbers in Feuchamaich Beagan Gaidhlig. We'll talk to you about the great man named Succat in our Celtic history segment, and I'll tell you about 10 seldom heard facts about St. Patrick in everyday Celtic ways. Now, the music. Throughout the program, you're going to hear music from Gaidhlig, Texas, which is a traditional Irish Feuchamaich band from Texas. Johnny McAvoy. At First Light, which is I first heard of them, but they're really good. And Brian Finnegan. All right. As always, we're going to start this thing off with a wee bit of Irish trivia to test your knowledge. Start us off. St. Patrick is also known as the patron saint of the Caribbean island of Montserrat. Why? All right. Feuchamaich. Let's kick this thing off. Enjoy.
Pascal and Doris can tell you, hear your Pascal and Doris can hear your hallelujah. Pascal and Doris can tell you, hear your criminally, feel your tired. Pascal and Doris can tell you, hear your Pascal and Doris can hear your hallelujah. Pascal and Doris can tell you, hear your criminally, feel your tired. Jesus Michigan Scarshak Mika, Jesus Michigan in your hallelujah. Jesus Michigan Scarshak Mika, criminally, feel your tired. Jesus Michigan Scarshak Mika, Jesus Michigan in your hallelujah. Jesus Michigan Scarshak Mika, criminally, feel your tired. Banyan and Gorica tell you, hear your Banyan and Gorica near your hallelujah. Banyan and Gorica tell you, hear your criminally, feel your tired. Banyan and Gorica tell you, hear your Banyan and Gorica near your hallelujah. Banyan and Gorica tell you, hear your criminally, feel your tired. Jesus Michigan Scarshak Mika, Jesus Michigan in your hallelujah. Jesus Michigan Scarshak Mika, criminally, feel your tired. Jesus Michigan Scarshak Mika, Jesus Michigan in your hallelujah. Jesus Michigan Scarshak Mika, criminally, feel your tired. Hattakalik, Riukalik, Hattakalik, Rishabalik, Hattakalik, Uyum Buyum, Rishabuyum, Verifalik, Hattakalik, Riukalik, Hattakalik, Rishabalik, Hattakalik, Uyum Buyum, Rishabuyum, Verifalik. Riukalik, Nankalik, Rikalik, Bala, Nankalik, Smashal, Tukakalik, Kanak, Rishakalik, Verifalik. Riukalik, Nankalik, Rikalik, Bala, Nankalik, Smashal, Tukakalik, Kanak, Rishakalik, Verifalik. Hattakalik, Riukalik, Hattakalik, Rishabalik, Hattakalik, Uyum Buyum, Rishabuyum, Verifalik. Hattakalik, Riukalik, Hattakalik, Rishabalik, Hattakalik, Uyum Buyum, Rishabuyum, Verifalik. Riukalik, Uyum Buyum, Rishakalik, Avik Uyum, Snurukalik, Kari, Pektarik, Kari, Palip. Riukalik, Uyum Buyum, Rishakalik, Avik Uyum, Snurukalik, Kari, Pektarik, Kari, Palip. Hattakalik, Riukalik, Hattakalik, Rishabalik, Hattakalik, Uyum Buyum, Rishabuyum, Verifalik. Hattakalik, Riukalik, Hattakalik, Rishabalik, Hattakalik, Uyum Buyum, Rishabuyum, Verifalik. Fakatu Salantawi, Fakatu Sawatu, Fakatu Salantawi, Salantawi Sawatu, Fakatu Salantawi, Fakatu Sawatu, Fakatu Salantawi, Salantawi Sawatu, Ilio Salantawi, Ilio Sawatu, Ilio Salantawi, Salantawi Sawatu, Ilio Salantawi, Ilio Sawatu, Ilio Salantawi, Salantawi Sawatu, Fakatu Salantawi, Fakatu Sawatu, Fakatu Salantawi, Salantawi Sawatu, Fakatu Salantawi, Fakatu Sawatu, Fakatu Salantawi, Salantawi Sawatu, Ilio Salantawi, Ilio Sawatu, Ilio Salantawi, Salantawi Sawatu, Ilio Salantawi, Ilio Sawatu, Ilio Salantawi, Salantawi Sawatu, Salantawi, Sawatu, Salantawi, Salantawi Sawatu, Salantawi, Sawatu, Salantawi, Salantawi Sawatu, Ilio Salantawi, Ilio Sawatu, Ilio Salantawi, Salantawi Sawatu, Ilio Salantawi, Ilio Sawatu, Ilio Salantawi, Salantawi Sawatu.
As a go Furgamwidge, as a go Falavamwidge, as a go Rishanana Hasu and Doris and Tall. Grahi hurry.
Ellen bona bon, Ellen bona bon, Ellen bona 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 very feel Ellen bona bon, Ellen bona bon, Ellen bona 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 very feel
Run for the Fullamar, run for the Fallamar, Leannan Beganamar, Veramage Greshad and Taring. No matter than a dirty.
Ellen bona bon, Ellen bona bon, Ellen bona 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 very feel Ellen bona bon, Ellen bona bon, Ellen bona 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 very feel Kaddish dan the show, Kaddish dan the show, Kaddish dan the show, Bellen a Dublin Amen. Na Maragan a Dunia, Ellen a bona bon, Ellen a bona bon, Ellen a bona 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 very feel Ellen a bona bon, Ellen a bona bon, Ellen a bona 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 very feel
Run for the Fullamar, run for the Fallamar, Leannan Beganamar, Veramage Greshad and Taring. No matter than a dirty.
Ellen a bona bon, Ellen a bona bon, Ellen a bona 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 very feel Ellen a bona bon, Ellen a bona bon, Ellen a bona 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 very feel
As a go Feuchamaich, as a go Feuchamaich, as a go Rishna no Hasun, Dadas and Tal. Grahi hurry.
All right, that was an example of pure Irish singing called Portugal, and the song was Foscail and Doris by Gaidhlig, Texas, a band out of Texas. One of the leaders of the band is a good friend of mine named Jonquil Jones, and she's a tremendous singer. And now, Hot and Tom and Feuchamaich Beagan Gaidhlig, it's time to try a little Gaelic. As I always say, I do not represent myself as an authority on the Gaelic language, only someone who loves learning it and who wants to help others in their journey of learning Gaelic. What I teach comes right from the textbooks of well-respected Gaelic teachers, and I'm just trying to make something interesting, informative, and fun. Today we're going to discuss numbers and ordinal numbers, and honestly, I didn't even know what an ordinal number was until I check this out. I mean, I knew them. I just didn't know what they were. I didn't know that term. And as always, I will display on the screen what I am discussing. So, Tashka Shin, let's begin. All right. I don't think I've ever actually done a lesson on counting. So, I was like, I think I need to do that because that comes up very often. And simple counting is, un, ja, tri, ceithir, cóc, shia, seach, och, noi, and check. That's 1 through 10. And then after that, you apply the word jig, not jack, jig. So 11 would be un jig, 12 would be da jig, then 13 is tri jig, ceithir jig, cóc jig, shia jig, seach jig, och jig, noi jig, and 20 is Succat. All right. After 20, you use a different form, and it would go Succat sa un is 21, Succat sa ja 22, Succat sa tri 23, and so on. All right. Other numbers like 40, do da iket, that's 40. I mean, it's 2 20s basically. And say you want to do 50, you can do da iket sajek, which is 2 20s and a 10. But you can also use lehiet, which is half 100. Trifiket is 60. Of course, kiet is 100. And mila is 1,000. All right. You probably recognize these two words in the Irish. If you've ever been to Ireland, it's on pretty much every sign there. Kiet mila falcha. It means 100,000 welcomes. All right. Now, on to ordinal numbers. All right. Hiet, first. Darna, second. Tleis, third. Kethrif, fourth. Choikiv, fifth. Shiativ, sixth. Shachiv, seventh. Achiv, eighth. Noiv, ninth. Jechiv, 10th. and Feuchamaich 20th. Now in Gaelic, to count things greater than 10, the following construction is used. The noun is inserted between the compound number. For example, Feuchamaich equals 16 sheep. Or Tríduine Jek Feuchamaich, 33 people. All right. Now, if you were to say, say you were going to be having a sheep race and needed to count in ordinal numbers, the same construction is used. For example, Sheativ Choragíag, 16th sheep, or Tríduine Jek Feuchamaich, 33rd person. All right. That's pretty simple, really. Kind of a slow sheep. It only came in 16th, but oh well. Had to train harder. All right. I'm going to give you a couple sentences here to translate into Gaelic, because it's actually pretty simple. And number 1 is Va indarna machdona. 2, Bimia shin an shachadiv la jiak. 3, Va mi achiat. 4, Va an shachadiv la chimiaristu. 5, Chachavel achiat ku. 6, Kachan ro and darnachu. Alright. And that's it for Feuchamaich Beagan Gaidhlig. But before I go, anybody interested in a Scottish weekly class, a Scottish Gaelic class weekly, just shoot me a line in the comments or at lordoftheales@aol.com. All right. That's it for Feuchamaich Beagan Gaidhlig.
I wish I was on yonder hill, 'tis there I'd sit and cry my fill, until every tear would turn a mill. Iscoche to morning slán. I'll sell my rock, I'll sell my reel, I'll sell my only spinning wheel, for to buy my love a sword of steel. Iscoche to morning slán. Shul, 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 shularun, shul go Succat agus shul go Cún, shul go Doras agus seldom. Iscoche to morning slán. I'll dye my petticoats, I'll dye them red, and round the world I'll beg my bread, until my parents should wish me dead. Iscoche to morning slán. Shul, shul, shularun, shul go Succat agus shul go Cún, shul go Doras agus seldom. Iscoche to morning slán. But now my love has gone to France, to try his fortune to advance. If he e'er comes back, 'tis but a chance. Iscoche to morning slán. Shul, 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 shularun, shul go Succat agus shul go Cún, shul go Doras agus seldom. Iscoche to morning slán. Shul, shul, shularun, shul go Succat agus shul go Cún, shul go Doras agus seldom. Iscoche to morning slán.
All right, that was Sularoon by Corgailge, Texas. Now this is a walking song traditionally associated with the Scottish Highlands. But walking, or the practice of walking, has happened all over the Celtic Islands, including Ireland. Now, this is the Irish version of this song, so I hope you enjoyed it. Next, we're going to delve into the rich history. This is our Celtic past in the Celtic History Break. Alright, the great man named Succat. Early in the 5th century, an Irish ship beat against the waves along the western coast of Great Britain, on the far edge of the crumbling Roman Empire. A band of Irish marauders crept into the secluded cove and raided the village of Benven Tournay. Along the plundered, captured by the band of warriors dispatched by Ireland's King Niall of 9 hostages, was a 16-year-old boy named Succat. Although brought to Ireland against his will, the teenager would go on to become Ireland's patron saint. Succat was born into a well-to-do family around 386 AD and grew up along Great Britain's western coast, likely in Wales, which was part of the Roman Empire at the time. His father was a Christian deacon and a minor Roman official and tax collector. His grandfather was a priest, so he knew about the Christian religion. The raid that tore him away from his family was not all that unusual in the early 5th century, though. We know from a few other late Roman sources that the Irish had been raiding western Britain regularly for at least a century before Patrick was captured in the early 400s. One of the most terrifying features of this period is the wholesale enslavement of free men and women, writes Thomas Cahill in How the Irish Saved Civilization, which, by the way, is an awesome book. In the slavery business, no tribe was fiercer or more feared than the Irish. As the Roman power waned, forays by the Irish raiders grew more common. On a regular basis, they plundered animals and clothes and snatched children from their sleep in the middle of the night. They abducted young men to herd sheep and cows and young women to serve them. Ripped from his home, Succat herded sheep for a local chieftain on the slopes of Mount Slemish in County Antrim in the northern of Ireland. Deprived of food and clothes, Patrick lived in virtual isolation. His only companions were his flock and his newfound faith, which developed and grew in his isolation. Succat's Christianity blossomed. He prayed as many times as 100 times a day and matched that total at night. And Patrick wrote in his writings the confession that 6 years into his captivity an angel appeared in a dream and told him, "Succat, you have fasted well. Very soon you will return to your native country." Now that angel told him of a ship leaving Ireland. So the young slave left his captivity behind and walked across 200 miles of peat bogs and forests before arriving at a port, possibly Wexford, where he found a cargo ship bound for the European continent. The captain initially refused him passage, so Succat turned, got down on his knees, and began to pray. 2 things happened that changed the captain's mind at that moment. A pack of captured dogs were being loud and difficult to load, and when Succat turned to pray, they immediately calmed down. The captain took notice of this. Before Succat could finish, though, a sailor from the ship came shouting quickly, "Come quickly, the captain wants to see you." The captain asked Succat to bless their voyage with a pagan blessing in return for passage. Succat's integrity caused him to refuse. He would not blaspheme the one true God. This changed the captain's mind, and Succat sailed from Ireland, believing that God's protection must have been responsible for his likely escape. This is a pivotal time in the Roman Empire. Everything that people held dear, their securities, their way of life, was changing dramatically. Life as they knew it was over, and their futures were uncertain. Patrick and his message appeared at just the right time. While some Romans were Christians, many were not, and only played the part. Patrick's message gave people hope, a sense of being, and something to look forward to. No wonder it was so appealing and no wonder his message spread like wildfire across Ireland and into Britain and beyond. St. Patrick, he was a slave in Ireland named Succat for 6 years, and eventually returned to his homeland, entered the clergy, became a bishop, and then returned as a missionary in Ireland in 432. I think when he was about 33 years old. And St. Patrick's telling in his confession, in his writings, he almost died after his escape from slavery. After landing on the continent, the ship's crew found itself wandering for weeks in a wilderness, devoid of food, and they began to chastise Succat for his piety. "What about this, Christian? You tell us about your God is great and all-powerful. Why can't you pray for us, since we're in such a bad state with hunger and all?" That's what the starving sailors would ask him. Obviously, I wasn't there, but turn in faith with all your hearts to the Lord my God, because nothing is impossible for him, St. Patrick replied to the young man who led them in a prayer that appeared to have immediately answered their prayers when a stampede of pigs crossed their path. In this act, Succat had his first converts. Succat eventually returned to his family in Great Britain. His parents begged him to never leave again. But the religious visions returned and presented Succat with a different plan. He heard the voice of the Irish call out, "We beg you, holy boy, to come and walk again amongst us." After a period of religious training, he was ordained a deacon around 418, and in 432 consecrated as a bishop and given the name Patricus. Although many freed slaves would have dreaded a return to their place of captivity, Patrick asked for an assignment as a missionary to Ireland. When he returned to the pagan island, he tended to a different type of flock. Patrick's knowledge of Ireland's language and customs facilitated his work in converting and baptizing Druid priests, chieftains, and aristocrats by the thousands, before his death on March 17th in 461 AD. God foresaw the crumbling of the Roman society. He knew the need of the Irish to be freed from paganism. He chose the right man at the right time, and Christianity flourished across Ireland, Britain, and into the continent. Patrick advocated learning among Christians. He promoted the ascetic life and monasticism. The Irish culture did not place great value on literacy or education. Patrick, however, promoted studying the scriptures and gaining whatever knowledge he could. Patrick entered an Ireland full of paganism and idol worship. Knowledge was held by the Druids and the ruling class, and the average Irish person had been kept illiterate and ignorant in order to control them. But just a few short decades after Patrick arrived, a healthy Christian, Christ-honoring church was thriving. The Irish church was so strong that it built schools, churches, and in the centuries to come it would send missionaries to evangelize much of the continental Europe, spreading not only knowledge but the Christian faith. Patrick's legacy lives on through the countless missionaries he left to continue his work. In the centuries to come, after the fall of the Roman Empire, when Patrick began in Ireland, After the fall of the Roman Empire, what Patrick began in Ireland became more important than ever. As societies fell without the Romans, chaos ensued. However, it was the bastions of learning and faith that had been established with Patrick's help that helped preserve ancient literature, knowledge, and antiquities. It was also the solid foundation of Christianity that helped rebuild much of Europe when it emerged from this time of turmoil. Now, Patrick lived in a way that brought honor to God. His devotion and resolute obedience offer examples for all followers of Christ. Patrick stood in the face of great challenges and did not falter. His service, his life, and his unwavering commitment to spreading the gospel of Christ are as commendable today as they were in the 5th century. Now, I know I have a few people that listen to me that are proclaimed pagans or atheists, and even though this has a lot of religious overtones in it, you cannot take away the immense work that Patrick did in spreading his Christianity across Ireland, Britain, and Europe. And it was kind of easy because at the time, pagans already had a view of gods in a trinity. And it was really easy for St. Patrick to teach that to the pagans, and therefore it was the conquest of Europe through Christianity was essentially a bloodless one. And so I understand today's story, today's history lesson was a bit on the religious side, but you have to take it from time to time. You have to understand that we live in a very religious world. So celebrate St. Patrick, celebrate what St. Patrick has done, and just enjoy life. And that's it for the Celtic History Break.
You ask me why I look so sad on this bright summer day, or why the tears are in my eyes and I seem so far away. Well, sit yourself beside me, love, and put your hand in mine, and I'll tell you of someone I loved long, long before your time. I'm sitting here and thinking of those days so long ago, when I was just a child like you and a girl I used to know. Through fields of green we laughed and played and sang our merry rhymes. Oh, summer days were warmer then, long, long before your time. Through childhood years our love did bloom, till our hearts were just as one, and we promised each eternal love in the church below the town. We settled in this little house I was proud to call her mine. Oh, we were young and happy then, long, long before your time. One lovely year was all we had until sickness came, that stole the roses from her cheeks. My tears, they fell like rain. For 9 long months she carried you, but in the end she died. She chose to go so you might live long, long before your time. So you ask me why I look so sad on this bright summer day, or why the tears are in my eyes and I seem so far away. It's just you seem a lot like her when your eyes look into mine, and you smile so much like she did long, long before your time. And you smile so much like she did long, long before your time.
Alright, that was Long Before Your Time by Johnny McAvoy. Now it's time for Everyday Celtic Ways, a look into how our Celtic heritage is still very much a part of our everyday lives. 10 facts about St. Paddy's Day. That's what we're talking about today. And while everyone claims to be Irish on St. Paddy's Day, well, except the Scottish, we're always Scottish, but you can sound like a real red-headed Irishman by knowing a few of these random facts about the day, the saint, and the traditions. You may even earn some green beer with your knowledge, so pay attention. Number 1. St. Patrick was not Irish, or a Patrick. The man we know as St. Patrick was born in Great Britain, named Maewyn Succat, and while he grew up knowing the Christian faith, he was not religious. He was kidnapped and sold into slavery by Irish marauders when he was 16. His religious beliefs grew and developed while he was enslaved. After escaping back to England, he became ordained as a priest and returned to Ireland to convert the Irish Celtic pagans to Christianity. All right. Number 2. St. Patrick's Day was not always a big party. Originally, on March 17th, the recorded day of St. Patrick's death, was celebrated as a Catholic feast and a quiet religious observance. The first largely public celebration of St. Paddy's Day took place in Boston in 1737. It did not become a national holiday in Ireland until 1903. In fact, until the 1970s, pubs in Ireland were required by law to be closed on March 17th. Wow. It wouldn't fly these days. All right, number 3. St. Paddy's Day parade started in the U.S. The first St. Paddy's Day parade was actually held in New York in 1762, when Irish soldiers serving in the English military during the Revolutionary War marched through the city to celebrate the religious feast day and their Irish roots. The first parade in Ireland was held in Dublin in 1931. Wow. Shamrocks are for Sunday school. Shamrocks and clovers have long been associated with St. Patrick because legend has it that he used the shamrock to describe the Christian idea of God as a Holy Trinity to the Druid king of Ireland. He chose the plant because the Celtics believed the clover to be sacred since its leaves form a triad. This helped him explain and then them understand the Trinity. The legend of the clover states that each leaf has meaning. The first leaf is hope, the second is faith, third is love, and the fourth is luck. All right, St. Patrick, number 5. St. Patrick, he actually wore blue. In modern celebrations of St. Paddy's Day, revelers wear green, eat and drink green foods, and turn everything they can dye green. This tradition is said to commemorate St. Patrick's use of the shamrock in his religious teaching, but didn't really become a part of his feast celebration until the 19th century, because in reality, St. Patrick wore blue. All right. Number 6. There were no snakes in Ireland. The legend of St. Patrick says that he is celebrated for driving all the snakes out of Ireland, which to this day is a snake-free zone. The only problem with this legend is that biologists now believe that there never were snakes in Ireland. Based on its geographical location and the temperature of the ocean surrounding it, snakes had no way of ever migrating to the island. Most likely, the legend of the snakes is a metaphor for St. Patrick driving paganism out of Ireland by converting so many people to Christianity. America, this is number 7. America has more Irish than Ireland. According to a U.S. Census, There are more Irish people in America than there are in Ireland. As of 2003, more than 34 million Americans had Irish ancestry. The population of Ireland is just more than 4 million people. Wow. Number 8. Plenty of Irish places to celebrate in the U.S. If you really want to get into the Irish spirit for St. Paddy's Day, you don't have to actually go to Dublin. There are plenty of towns in the U.S. that sound like they are in Ireland. In fact, there are at least 7 Shamrocks. You have 7 Shamrock, Texas, Shamrock, Colorado, Shamrock, Oklahoma, Shamrock Lakes, Indiana, Mount Gay Shamrock, North Carolina, and Shamrock, Missouri. Oh, and of course, Shamrock, Louisiana. There are 16 cities in the U.S. named after Ireland's capital city, Dublin. The largest is Dublin, California, and the second largest is Dublin, Ohio. You could also visit Emerald Isle, North Carolina, or Irishtown, Illinois, or for some St. Paddy's Day fun. All right. Number 9. The Chicago River isn't always that green. In celebration of the Shamrock and the Emerald Isle itself, American St. Paddy's Day partygoers like to turn things green. One well-known dye job happens every year in Chicago when the city dyes its river green. This tradition began in 1692 when the parade organizer, head of a plumbers union, noticed that the dye that had been used to find sources of river pollution stained his clothing green. He thought it would be a great idea to use enough dye to turn the whole river green for the city's St. Patrick's Day celebration. Researchers say the environmental impact of the dye is less than that of the pollution from sewage treatment plants, so they weren't too worried about that. All right. Number 10. Corned beef and Guinness get a boost. Aside from the varieties of green foods people consume for the Feast of St. Patrick, there are some popular Irish treats that get a boost on the big day. Corned beef and cabbage is a popular traditional Irish food. Each year in the U.S., more than 26 billion pounds of beef and more than 2 billion pounds of cabbage are produced. Wow. To wash this down, those who want to be truly Irish will have a pint of Guinness. The brewer says more than 13 million pints will be consumed around the world on St. Paddy's Day. So raise a glass. You probably won't remember any of this anyway in the morning. All right. And as a bonus, something you probably need to know is St. Patrick is not really a saint. The man we all refer to as St. Patrick was never canonized by Rome. Therefore, he is only a great Christian leader, a bishop, and a man, not a saint. But God has a way of calling people that aren't qualified. God knew Patrick's heart and knew he would do great works in his name. All right. That's it for Everyday Celtic Ways. I hope you liked it. Alright, and that was The Piper of Roguery by At First Light. I like that band. I've just heard about them the other day. They're pretty good. Alright, well that's it for today's show. I hope you liked it. I'm trying to keep it interesting, informative, and fun. For me, anytime you can infuse something Celtic in your day, that's a great day. And I'd like to thank everyone for all the support and kind words, all the likes and new subscribers. Top 11, thank you, friends. Now, before I go, the trivia question and answer. Montserrat's Irish heritage dates back to the 17th century, when the island became a haven for Irish Catholics who had been persecuted on other Caribbean islands. The Irish were originally sent into exile there and endured devastating indentured servitude by Cromwell and others. By 1978, a census showed that more than half the people on the island were Irish, so it is hardly surprising that the Irish had such a strong influence on the island's developing culture. There is actually a small community there of Irish Gaelic speakers, too. So, there you go. Remember to check out Gaelic for Sassenachs on Facebook to get Gaelic in your newsfeed every day. Duolingo and LearnGaelic.net for learning Gaelic language. ACGAamerica.org for promoting the Scottish language. And, of course, my YouTube channel, Ye Olde Scot. Check it out. I got a bunch of new Learn a Gaelic song videos coming out, and my Celtic podcast every week. I've been gathering up some movies on there, so there's pretty much a one-stop shop for all your Celtic needs. All right. Martian Leave and Drozda, bye for now. I'm going to let you go with a song, Back to Belfast by Brian Finnegan. Enjoy.